represent the 26th Congressional District. I'm a West Point graduate. I live up in Little Elm with my wife of 22 years, and I've got 3 sons, 21, 18, and 15, and I look forward to turning your vote. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Armstrong.
My name is Michael Armstrong. I'm a 45-year-old pastor. I've been starting churches in North Texas for about 25 years as a worship leader. So if that matters to you, I sing a lot. They don't let me talk because they don't know what I'm going to say. I've been married 18 years. I have 3 kids, 12, 11, and 10, and I am running with Jason against Michael Burgess.
Mr. Wyman.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for being here. I'm Jack Wyman. I have great respect for the men who are in this race. They are decent and good men. But I must tell you that I have genuine policy differences with Michael Burgess. He was the only Republican in the entire Congress, in the House and the Senate, to vote with Nancy Pelosi, AOC, and the squad to lower the national voting age to 16. All you have to do is go online and watch 16-year-olds ingesting Tide Pods, and you have to say to yourself, you've got to be insane to want these people to be voting.
All right, first question goes to Mr. Mrochek. What are the strengths and weaknesses of the USMCA trade agreement just passed by the House?
So I will start with the strengths. So it's a good concept, right? I mean, it's strengthening trade, providing opportunities for businesses, etc. The weakness, in my mind, overwhelms the strengths, and that is that we are still handing over authority to unelected bureaucrats that don't have to get approval for various decisions they're going to make that are going to affect our trade. So in my mind, while it's good in theory, I think it still needs to come back to the drawing board and do better, and then actually put the authority where it belongs with Congress.
Okay. Mr. Armstrong.
Same question.
Same question.
I agree with Jason. There are too many bureaucracies with folks that don't get elected that have control over all our trade and all our agreements, even the EPA, which isn't part of this agreement. I know it doesn't really change NAFTA much. You know, I was reading up on USMCA, and I know it helps a little bit, but it's basically NAFTA plus a couple of things. And so I think we can do a lot better, but anything that's pro-America, I'm for, so there you go.
Mr. Wyman.
It is very important that we have constructive and effective trade agreements, especially with the countries in our own hemisphere. I do support, in principle, the USMCA. However, I do believe that there are parts of it that need to be reviewed and need to be amended. Those that affect ranchers and farmers, it's especially important that we consider their interests in any kind of a trade agreement. And I think that we can probably take this back to the drawing board and make some improvements on it. At the same time, it is an improvement on NAFTA, and to that extent, I do support it.
Mr. Armstrong. We know that bills can be thousands of pages long, and a favorite way for our liberties to be curtailed is by burying details in these bills. What will you do to ensure you know what is in the bill before you vote on it?
That's a great question. Look, the whole system's broken. The fact that we have that much pork in all our bills is one of the reasons we have the mess that we have. You know, you get a bill, the first 10 pages are things you agree with, the last 100 pages are things you absolutely oppose. How do you vote for that? You know, if you vote for it, they're going to say you're against it. You know, it's a mess. Congress is broken. We need to simplify our bills. I mean, couldn't we do it in a couple of pages? The rest of the world works that way. And in fact, I think most of the bills that were passed this past year, most of the congressmen didn't have time to read it. It gets dropped on their desk the night before and they're expected to vote the next day. That's insane.
Mr. Mrochek.
Yeah, this comes back to reading is fundamental. I don't think that y'all are electing somebody to go off to Congress and then defer to somebody else to read the bills. I believe it is my responsibility to do that. And you know, to the extent that I'm given the opportunity to read the entire bill before voting on it, I will do that. If I don't have the time to vote on a bill, I'm not going to cast a vote on it unless I've come across one unconstitutional provision and then it's out, or try to amend it.
It obviously is very important for every elected representative to take legislative review seriously. I will read the bills. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that I'm going to spend 100% of my time reading every single bill that's introduced from beginning to end. And neither of these gentlemen, they won't do that either. But I will study the bills, I will read them, I will listen to my constituents, I will talk with my colleagues, I will have an excellent staff that will make sure that they're keeping me well informed. I will study hard, I will take my responsibility, and every single vote that I cast seriously on your behalf.
Mr. Wyman, we're going to let you have this next one. How do you propose to curb spending?
I think what we need to do is reform our budget process. I think we have to do away with this whole idea, which was most evident in the last budget bill that was adopted, of Republicans and Democrats upping the ante for their special interest in their pet projects. It's like decorating a Christmas tree. People are adding on to it and adding on to it. We will not be able to bring fiscal sanity into our Congress and into our government until men and women in both political parties realize this is not just an economic issue, it is a profound moral issue as well.
Mr. Armstrong?
No, the system's broken. In what other area of life do you get to keep increasing your budget end over end? And even when you have a debt ceiling, you just vote to go through it. It doesn't work in the real world. And the real world is what we need in DC right now. Like I said, the whole system's broken. The only way I would want to curb spending is vote against it. And maybe for every dollar we're going to spend, vote against $2 we can cut. Just something practical, something like I would do in my own home. So.
As with most broken things in Congress, I think the answer falls in the Constitution. And the Constitution in Article 1, Section 8 tells us exactly those areas that we are allowed to legislate on and therefore appropriate. And so if the subject matter or the provisions in an appropriation bill does not fall within one of those clauses, then it gets a no vote. I think we've dug ourselves in a hole, and the way that you stop when you dig yourself in a hole is you stop digging. That means you stop spending. It means you have to say no to things that people are used to saying yes to. So if it's not constitutional spending, it doesn't happen. It's a no vote.
Mr. Armstrong, many congressmen pride themselves in bringing home federal dollars for their districts. What will you do for your district?
Look, I love my district, and I'd love to bring home all this money. But that's what everyone does, and that's why the budget in DC is bloated. And so you've got to limit that somehow. I mean, and that's why we need people we trust up there to make those kinds of decisions. It's easy to stand here and say, look how much I did for us this last year, and then our national debt's through the roof. That's part of the problem. So if you elect someone you trust, they can make those decisions and say, look, I brought home the exact amount of money that we needed, and we fixed the things we need to fix, but on every other level I've curbed spending. So that's what I would do.
Mr. Mrochek?
So these questions are good because they build on one another. So this still applies to Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. And you have to, you're not going to bring home money if it's not authorized in the Constitution. Congress's job is not to solve problems. Congress's job is to defend liberty. And so we just got to get Congress to get out of our way. And that solves a lot of the problems that people are asking for support for. They want people to solve their problems or to bring home special things that are not authorized in the Constitution. So again, reading is fundamental. Article 1, Section 8 is going to tell us what we are authorized to spend money on, and then we just don't do that.
Mr. Wyman?
I, of course, am going to work hard for my district. But I think that question requires us to think about the need to reorient this whole pork barrel spending mentality that we have endured for years, maybe for over 100 years. And that is what has driven our deficit up to over $23 trillion. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to promise you that I am going to wage war on pork barrel spending and special projects just to placate constituencies, and that will include my own.
Amen.
Mr. Mrochek? We've recently seen compelling evidence that government agencies such as the FBI, the CIA, and the FISA courts are abusing their power and position to unlawfully spy on our elected representatives, including our president. What can you do to help end these abuses?
That's a good question. So first, oversight is key. We have to provide more oversight to the executive agencies. That's part of our role. I think that we have allowed way too much intrusion and into our civil liberties. One of those is the ability for federal law enforcement to essentially spy on American citizens. So I believe that we need to review legislation that is out there that allows them to do that so that we can get them out of our business. Again, it's about defending liberty, not solving problems.
Mr. Wyman.
It's a disgrace, is what it is. A disgrace. The former administration, former President of the United States, and his senior advisors need to be held to account for what they have done in spying on a presidential candidate, on seeking to undermine and disrupt his transition, and for hounding him ever since he has been in office. If I'm elected to Congress, I promise you this, we will reform the FISA court. We will end this corruption. We will attack the deep state.
Mr. Armstrong.
I agree with everything these gentlemen said, so I won't belabor it and say it again. I will say this, though, as it pertains to Michael Burgess. What has happened in D.C. the past years has been a travesty. And I hear a lot of voices that the Freedom Caucus are very loud about this particular thing, Devin Nunes and Jim Jordan, those guys. Our guy's not in that fight. And we're like, I think the email that y'all sent out to us said we're the 9th most Trump voting district in America. You would think that our representative would be like one of the leading voices of conservatism, fighting and pushing back every day. And we don't have that right now.
All right. Mr. Mrochek. Texas is arguably the most important state in the Union when it comes to preserving and promoting conservative values. How can you, as our District 26 Congressman, exhibit this leadership specifically?
Yeah, so this comes down, leadership is the key word here, right? So going there and legislating, defending liberty is good, but it's also about influencing, inspiring the guy to your right and your left to ask them, again, why did you come to Congress? What oath did you take? And are you fulfilling that oath to support and defend the Constitution? We have to be able to influence those people and kind of grab them up by the hair and say, look, it's not happening. So it's important to be able to exert that leadership, and just getting back to fundamentals is the way to do that. There's really not an easier way than that.
Mr. Armstrong.
Can you repeat the question?
Texas is arguably the most important state in the Union when it comes to preserving and promoting conservative values. How can you, as our District 26 Congressman, exhibit this leadership specifically?
Thank you. I'm sorry. I was enamored with Jason's response. I got lost in time there. Look, I'm not conservative because it benefits me politically. I was raised conservative. I've been in conservative churches. If you've read my bio, I've basically been a pastor for all these years. They don't let me talk. I told you that. But look, I'm not going to try to preach. Some of you guys may not go to church, but there was a guy that lived about 2,000 years ago, and he never backed down. Right? He stood up for truth always, and he drew people to himself. There's a way to win this, and it's not yelling at people. It's not putting people in their corners where all they can do is bicker and get defensive. There is a way to win over hearts and minds and never back down from what you believe. I've been doing that 20 years in Texas, and yeah, I can do it up there.
Mr. Wyman.
It's time for this district to have a strong and courageous voice on behalf of the values that have made Texas and America great. I will be that voice. I will be a voice for Americanism. And by that, what I mean is the exceptional qualities and history of this country, the greatest nation in the history of the world. I believe in American exceptionalism, and I think we need to stop blaming America first. Instead, we need to start putting America first, our interests and our values and our traditions and the history of this country as well.
Mr. Armstrong, which current U.S. representative is closest to your political philosophy?
Ooh, anyone in the Freedom Caucus. I like those guys. When I turn on the TV, when I read the news, those are the guys standing up. Jim Jordan is kind of my hero. One, he doesn't wear a tie. I like that. I had a tie on. I took it off, turned on the table back there. I just, look, that's not me. And if I go up there, I'll do what I got to do. But I like the guys that stand up and push back. The left advances whether they win or they lose elections. They're always advancing. If you look at our culture the past 30 years, we've been slowly giving away ground. And so it's time to have someone who can just stand up and put a stop to that and push back the other way. So anyone in the Freedom Caucus, heroes of mine.
Mr. Wyman.
Nationally, Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows in Texas, Louis Gohmert, and Chip Roy.
Okay. Mr. Mrochek.
Yeah, Chip Roy is one of mine. Also, Thomas Massey out of Kentucky. These guys are doing the right thing for the right reasons. My motto is, principles only mean something if you stick to them when it's inconvenient, and these guys are willing to go up against Democrats, Republicans. If it's the right thing to do, they're willing to do that. And I think we have to get a hold of our own too sometimes, and that's not always easy. It's unpopular.
All right, at this time we will let each of you give a 1-minute closing statement, and Mr. Wyman, we're going to let you go first.
Thank you, Jill, and I want to thank the Republican Club for hosting this event. This nation is at a critical crossroads, like it's never been before in its history. We are either going to descend down the dark road of socialism, big government, and the loss of individual freedoms and liberties, or we are going to reaffirm the traditional and conservative values that have made Texas and America great. I have spent my entire life in faith-based nonprofit work, in pastoral ministry, and I am the only challenger in this race who has held elected public office. 3 years on the local school board, 2 terms in the state legislature. And I'm the only one in this race that has spent 8 years as a respected and popular adjunct instructor in American government for 8 years at North Central Texas College. I want to be your voice. Give me an opportunity and I will be your champion. I will fight for you until the last dog dies for the values that made America and Texas great. Thank you.
Mr. Armstrong.
Jack is right. I've never held public office. You can probably tell by the way I talk. I'm just a guy. Look, I'm a guy that wakes up every morning and I'm concerned about our country. If you know the history of the world, you know that Rome was the most powerful country in the world. And they crumbled from within. No one could defeat them from without. They crumbled from within. And when I turn on the TV and I read the newspapers, I see us crumbling from within with these politically correct, woke, safe space culture we've created. We're losing a generation. And it's my generation and younger. I've asked hundreds of people the past months, who's your representative? Who stands in Congress and represents you? No one can answer that question. Do you think if Jim Jordan were the representative, they would know the answer? I think the answer is yes. We need someone who's going to fight. Look, I'm not a fighter, but I have an urgency in me for what is right and what is true and what needs to happen. And for 25 years, I've done that in ministry in North Texas. And if you guys vote for me, I'll do it up there. And if you don't, I won't lose a second of sleep over it. I just want you to get behind somebody that you believe and tell all the people you know about it. If it's me, if it's Jack, if it's Jason, vote for Jason. He's a great guy. Okay? Oh, I gotta stop, sorry.
Mr. Mrochek.
Can you give another 30 seconds?
You can vote for Jack, too. I didn't mean to leave you out, Jack, sorry.
That's an endorsement.
Public service is an honor and a privilege. When I graduated from West Point, I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It's very important to me. It's also the same oath that every member of Congress is going to take and has taken. And yet today, very few of them honor it, whether it's through ignorance, apathy, or even outright subversion. So I think that if on March 3rd, you are going to have an opportunity. You have a choice to make. You have an opportunity to term limit a current incumbent of almost 2 decades, or you can vote for me, a veteran who has spent his entire adult life supporting and defending our Constitution. I also have a track record, a long demonstrated history of fighting in the trenches with we the people for our values and our principles. So I look forward to earning your vote, and I look forward to continuing to honor my oath by defending liberty, keeping Texas strong, and fighting for smaller government. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much.